Good morning, everybody. We are going to have a conversation about Wimbledon's online adventure. A quick introduction, my name is Yuri Groenewoud. I head up sales for globally across Europe, based out of Amsterdam, but also spend a couple of days a week in London. But the majority of the conversation today will be speaking about Wimbledon. So, Richard.
Hello, everybody. My name is Richard Wilson. I head up the e-commerce operation at Wimbledon, and we've come quite a long way in quite a short time. So, a bit of a chat about how we got there and how Globally have helped us. So, how did we get to where we are today? And it's worth setting the scene about what Wimbledon have done in the previous kind of 7 or 8 years. The retail operation at Wimbledon was always outsourced until post-Championships 2016, when there was a strategic move to bring in-house a lot of the different operations, including retail. So we did that, and that was to take more control of the brand and really focus on the quality of the output. Retail was one point, but we kind of created the new brand positioning, which you'll be familiar with, the In Pursuit of Greatness brand positioning, and also the broadcast was bought in-house as well. As far as retail goes, you'll see up there it says 8 millimeters of grass. Now, some of you might not know this, but every single blade of grass at Wimbledon is cut to 8 millimeters. And that precision and that attention to detail was a real inspiration for us within the retail team about how we were going to change things and how we were going to run things at Wimbledon. We terminated a lot of licensees, namely our apparel licensee at that time, and my boss, who came from a medium premium fashion background, decided that we were going to run this, especially in our apparel, working directly with factories. So instead of buying t-shirts and slapping a Wimbledon logo on the front of it, we were buying fabrics, we were creating patterns, we were creating different size charts and so on and so forth, and really taking control of the quality of the product. So that in a nutshell is what we did in a very quick cover off. But during that time, during that first period, the online store was still outsourced to a third party. That third party did a sterling job, but it was very much a 2, 3, 4 week operation year round whilst the championships was on. And we knew that we had the opportunity to build that out and to build that website that was more on brand with Wimbledon and what Wimbledon was doing, making it rich in photography like Wimbledon.com was, and making it a true Wimbledon guest experience. The previous website was a little bit muddled in ways. It had a fairly confusing navigation and so on and so forth. So that first period for us was very much concentrated on building a familiar Wimbledon brand experience, but also a familiar retail shopping experience, online shopping experience. So that kind of was the motive to do it, and we finally brought the online shop in-house in March 2020, working with Vimo as our e-com development agency. It launched on the 16th of March, 1 week before the lockdown. So that was a bit of a struggle, but you roll with the punches.
Okay, so quite an impressive start to begin with. And I learned something new myself again about the 8 millimeters, which becomes more challenging as the tournament continues.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now the plan is there. What challenges did you face when trying to maximize the global growth? So,
as I said, the initial build of the website was very much concentrated on the experience of the browsing experience, sorry, and making sure that website was on brand, making sure that we had rich photography, making sure that we had strong product descriptions, all of these things that weren't necessarily in place with a third-party operator. So when passing over the operation, we actually had a slight lack of data from that third party. We weren't sure on what the demand was going to be. We knew that there were a lot of Wimbledon fans out there, but we weren't so sure on what the demand might be. So it was an observational period. We obviously had COVID to contend with as well, which was a difficulty, and we had the cancellation of the championships because of COVID in 2020. So we had to wait pretty much 18 months before we really knew what the demand was going to be for Wimbledon, especially the international demand. In between times, we had Brexit, which made operations a lot more difficult as well. So all of these added up to a lot of the challenges that we saw and we'd implemented in the first place. We only had a single currency. We only sold in pound sterling. Our shipping rates were pretty basic. We had a domestic shipping rate, a European shipping rate, and a rest of the world shipping rate. It wasn't. There was no science to it at all. That was that. And returns were very much on the customer. If you didn't like the product, you were going to send it back to us, and it was at your cost. So that they were some of the challenges that we saw, and we soon found out after that 2021 championships what the international demand was, and how important it was for us to cater to those international customers and or as we call them at Wimbledon, guests. It was much higher than we expected. It was our sales were north of 40%, and we knew that along with a fulfillment operation that we had to tailor and change actually, that we had to cater for these international guests. Some of the sales were from territories that we expected. Some were from territories we didn't expect. And I think one of our favourite stories is we and still to this day that the biggest transaction we've ever done has come from overseas. It was a one single transaction to the Cayman Islands that was £29,000. So that goes to show some of the international demand.
Can you disclose what they bought?
Everything.
Everything,
yeah. But funnily enough, they didn't buy a Wimbledon towel, and most people buy a Wimbledon towel. So everything apart from a Wimbledon towel.
Okay. So the what were the key goals for really the international e-commerce plans?
So, I mean, fairly simply, it was guest experience, making sure that our international customers, guests, had the same premium experience that our domestic guests were getting. Obviously, we wanted to capitalise on those sales goals as well. But at Wimbledon, we're fairly lucky that sales isn't everything, and especially in retail, we are a very small. We are a small but growing part of what Wimbledon does, and we have to fit in with some of the other business objectives. And we wanted to capitalise on those sales things, but actually making sure that guest experience was there for our international customers, who we saw that there were a lot of, was extremely important to us. And we know that people who visit Wimbledon, 42,000 people who come to the grounds every day during the championships, they have a great experience. Surveys that we run show us that. We have unbelievably successful guest experience numbers. But actually, in some of the reviews we were getting from international customers, those numbers weren't in line with what we were seeing. So it was very, very important for us to manage that and to make sure that we were serving those people as well as the people who visited domestically. Equally, I mentioned some of our fulfillment issues that we had. We needed to iron those out, especially for the international customers. Because of Brexit, we had some issues. Hold our hands up, we weren't prepared for it, and we weren't prepared for the difficulty that it might bring. We had to iron those out and make sure.
You were not the only one.
No, well, that's kind to say.
Okay. So now that we have somewhat of a clear picture what Wimbledon's plans were and what their objectives were, Globally came into the picture. So for those of you who are not familiar with Globally, we are the direct-to-consumer partner on a global scale for brands to really help localize the full shopping journey. So whether you want to buy products in the UAE, in Mexico, or in Switzerland, we basically help those brands with a fully localized checkout solution. We do that for the brands that you can see on the screen, although I'm recognizing now that the logos might be quite small. We operate with over 1,000 different brands. We do that with 800 people spread out over 20 countries. Really started expanding outside of the UK, also to markets like even Japan, Korea, into the Nordics, expanded our business operation into Japan or into Italy. So truly becoming a global player, not just to provide solutions into markets, but also out of all of those markets. The company is trading on NASDAQ since 2021, successfully trading there with an adjusted target for this year. Earlier, we were anticipating to end close to the 3.5 billion in actual GMV, so the tradable revenue through our website, and we've recently adjusted it upwards, where we expect to be closer to 3.6. So one of the fewer companies on the NASDAQ that is still actually expanding. All right. So, paper and technique don't go well together. So, how did you go about building a true global operation?
So following that 2021 championships and the data that we'd gathered and the experience that we'd gone through and some of the challenges that I said about just a second ago, we had two very clear priorities, and that was one, renewing our fulfillment operation, which is obviously anyone who has done that knows what a big task that is. And number two was to capitalize and on those international sales and iron out that international experience. So what that looks like was one, we had to find a new fulfillment supplier, which actually took longer because of the due diligence that we had to do than we expected. And two, we had to find that international partner to help us iron out those issues that we had. What that then looks like was what you see up here on the screen. We integrated with the work from Vimo and Globally and our new fulfillment supplier, PFS, a three-way integration on pretty short timelines. I go so far to say that it's maybe one of the most challenging projects that I've ever worked on, but probably the most fulfilling as well, no pun intended. To work with both teams at Globally, Vimo, and the guys at PFS as well was incredible, and on such short timelines, everyone pulled in the same direction and everyone made it happen to make sure that we had a run-up before the championships. We launched with both the new fulfillment and Globally late May 2022, and we had a full month's trading and just before the championships came, and I'm not sure I've called out a thank you to those parties publicly, but I'd like to thank them all for that work that they've done for us. Truly hard work, transparency, clear guidance, and a team spirit was really led to a successful project. So yeah, thanks to those guys, and it's kind of been success since then, I think, which we'll talk a little bit about now, I think.
Yeah, so now we'll go a little bit more deeper in what does the checkout and the whole experience actually looks like from a messaging perspective, but also how do you set your price strategy? So maybe as a first point around messaging, what was the biggest point for you that you wanted to bring across to your shoppers?
I think it's a welcome. It's a simple welcome. It's making someone feel comfortable. We know that when someone comes to site at Wimbledon, that we have people on the gates who speak multiple languages. Wherever they're from, they get a nice welcome. They didn't get that before we had this feature. It was landed. They landed. They could see a message in their own language. They could see that they could shop in their own currency. Simple as. And actually, we've not utilised this feature as much as we would like to. And it's purely down to team capacity at this stage. But we've got plans of how we're going to utilise this in different markets, try and capitalise on different players and so on and so forth moving forward. So yeah, that was a really important one for us, and making the customer feel comfortable.
Okay. Well, on this one, if a brand's already very much recognized in the country, there's an option to have this field there or not, to have a welcome message. But especially when you start opening up and transacting into new markets, it's an ideal way to really, like you said, make them welcome to your website. Then the next point is around pricing strategy. You might have existing price models in place. If there are countries where you're not offering any pricing yet or any product, then you have a little bit more freedom. How did you look at that country by country?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, we weren't experienced on this, and so we lent on the Globally teams to guide us on what might be best. But what we saw from this is, and again, it's a guest experience thing. It's making the customer comfortable with what they're seeing. You can convert a price from pounds to dollars, but or whatever it might be, whatever currency it might be, but I don't know about you, but if I'm shopping in a converted currency and I see that the price of it is £25.67, I don't feel overly comfortable still. And so those rounding rules that you put in place and those familiar pricing structures that you can put in place, it really, really helps.
Okay, great. We'll continue to the next part. So this is more around multilingual on the checkout side. Is that something that you did from day one to?
Something that we had in place from day one, and simply, it's the important part, right? It's the bit that the customer really needs to understand how much they're going to be paying, and if English isn't their first language, then to have the option to translate the checkout into their local language, then that's obviously superb.
Okay, and then. We might not have time to go through each and single one of them, but one that's also very important is setting the right payment methods. I don't think it's about having a lot of different payment methods. It's very much about who is your audience, what's the average order value that you have, and which ones will transact the best in the countries that you're trying to grow together. So. What was kind of a payment method that you really wanted to have in there?
Well, all of them. Why not? Why not have all of them? Yeah. It's what Globally offers, okay? And I mean, I can talk about each of these things individually, and we have utilised all of them, and the results have been great. We'll see that some of them in a second. But I mean, just to have those shipping options, those payment options, and to actually the shipping pricing as well that we were able to set per territory was great. I talked about earlier about having a pretty one-dimensional or three-dimensional, if you like, shipping pricing set up, and to change that was superb, and to have an express option for shipping was also very important. I often say no one needs a Wimbledon towel tomorrow, but actually to have that is great, and to get some of the feedback from someone in the depths of Idaho who's received their Wimbledon towel in 2 to 3 days, and to their surprise is great.
Okay, great. So let's step into a little bit more detail around what happened after all of this was implemented.
So we obviously, it was implemented 4 weeks before the championships in 2022. We had to have an observational period. The impact was immediate. June, year on year, 22 versus 21 was up 76% on the previous year without doing anything. We didn't do anything. We implemented it and we sat back and we watched with great surprise and delight, of course. Following the 22 championships, we obviously delved into some of the data that we saw and looked at our margins and the territory sales and so on and so forth, and we started to make a few tweaks. We knew and we still know that shipping for us it's difficult. Our product range is wide. Okay, we sell a 12 racket carrier bag, we sell a key ring, we sell an umbrella, we sell a baby grow, and we sell a blazer. To ship all of those things in the same package sometimes is difficult, and so predicting our shipping costs and making those manageable was always going to be a task. But we've been able to delve into the data and then look at Globally's wider data, how we can optimize product pricing with margin coefficients versus shipping pricing and so on and so forth, to find a model that we are now comfortable with that is both good for the customer but also meets our business aims as well.
So it sounds like the data piece was quite important.
Really important, yeah, really important, because I mean, otherwise it's finger in the air stuff, right? And so you've got to lean on that to really get that right. And we didn't get it right first time. We had the first observational period. We changed it again, and we thought actually we need to make some changes again. And we've worked very, very closely with Jack and the team at Global E to make that work.
Okay, so what were the actual results? Because I'm sure people would be interested to understand what were kind of the key points that you were measuring and how did it look?
Yeah, I mean, our results have been amazing. As I said, the international sales were 40-ish% pre-Global E of our total sales. They're now up at 60. They're up at 60%. Our international sales are now greater than our domestic sales, which is quite something when you think about it. It's very much a traditional English event, and to outsell internationally than you do domestically, I think is really quite impressive, and will probably be quite a surprise to some people. The sales are obviously great, but you can't really put a price on that customer experience, and actually the load that has been lightened on the team, which is a very, very small team, with some of those operational pieces that Global E offer to us, to lighten the load on the customer service team and making sure that we can concentrate on other things to optimize the website and our offering.
So now that you have all of this, final question is, what's next?
Well, we keep growing. We keep growing, and we are, versus the third-party supplier that operated the online store before we took it in-house. Our financial year 22-23, we were over 200% up on their best ever year. So it's been insane. We're going to look to capitalize on the Wimbledon specific territory growth markets that the business has, but we also have retail specific markets that we know we're strong in. One of the really nice things that we see and that we can try and capitalize on is we see increased sales in certain markets depending on how certain players are doing. We had our best year in Australia in 22 because Kyrgios made the final. In 2023, July itself was up 136% in Spain, and I think that's probably the Carlos Alcaraz effect. We can't really put anything else that it's down to. So it's great that we can grow in those markets, and now we have this platform in place for growth. We can really start to move past that observational stage, that tweaking stage, and look to utilize our own audience at Wimbledon that we've not been able to lean on before. We have 3.5 million people in our My Wimbledon database, and I'm not sure how many of them actually know that they can shop with us, especially internationally. So that's great, and it's just I guess a big thank you to everyone who we've worked with, from everyone at Wimbledon, on the success that this has brought. We are a very, very small team. The e-commerce operation is a relative startup, but actually the developments that we've put in place and the work that we have done has given us a platform to behave like a mature e-commerce business. Great
to hear all of this, and a great journey that you've had so far and that we've had together.
Absolutely.
It's been amazing. I think you also wanted to offer the opportunity to people that are attending here to actually buy some Wimbledon gear.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone, if you can flick through, you'll see it on the screen. Happy for anyone to take a 20% basket discount off of the Wimbledon shop for the next couple of weeks. If you do want that Wimbledon towel, you're not going to get it tomorrow. You don't need it tomorrow, as I've said, but there's a little sweetener there for you.
Does it only have to be the towel?
No, not just the towel. That's just the most popular product. You can buy anything. It's off anything online. And if any of you want to ship to the Cayman Islands, that might help us keep up with that previous transaction in that territory.
I think we've done a pretty good job on time management here. 25 minutes. I think we have a few more minutes maybe available for a few questions. I don't know if there's anybody in the audience that would like to ask something.
Oh, we're done.
We don't have time. I thought we still had time. One question.
One?
Sorry about that. In terms of international shipping, how do you overcome the high cost of shipping to countries such as the Cayman Islands or anything particularly outside of Europe?
So we, as a business, have made a decision on the amount of subsidy that we are happy to pay, and we know that our average order values and our margins that we have on our products will offset some of that. Obviously, it's different for every territory, but using Globally and the margin coefficient ruling that you can put in place, so there's rounding rules and margin coefficient rules that you can set. Customers are often happy to pay a little bit more for the product on the product price and pay less on the shipping. So that's how we've managed it.
So for more questions, we'll be over at the Globally booth.
Absolutely.
So we have to end here. I see somebody waving there very aggressively. So thanks everybody, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you all.